Oh look, a shameless plug for Loot Crate. That's where I got this shirt. Hi, my little flavors. Welcome to another episode of the Motley Stew Show, where we try to pull back the curtain on some of the biggest political stories of the past week, find out who are we really talking about, why should we care, and what is really going on. Jumping back into the series of getting to know the candidates for the 2016 race, this episode is about the governor of New Jersey for the past 6 years, brash, bad boy, Chris Christie. Looking back a couple years ago to the 2012 presidential race, Chris Christie was looked at actually as a viable candidate for that time around. He was a popular governor of a deeply blue state, proving that he could work across party lines, especially since the state legislature was so deeply controlled by Democrats. And he had a very public reputation for speaking in blunt, plain terms, something which he is very proud of. But he felt the time wasn't right for him, even though many in the party were pushing him to take it. Instead, he came out as one of the first major people to endorse Mitt Romney, and we all know how that went. He won the nomination and lost the general election. Now, as the 2012 election was actually coming to a close, Governor Chris Christie actually had bigger things on his mind, namely Superstorm Sandy, which leveled unparalleled destruction on his state. Now, Christie publicly went on tour and surveyed the damage with President Obama, and he both verbally and physically heaped praise on him for all the attention that Obama was giving New Jersey and the open lines of communication that he had started. He mentioned time and time again that Obama had called him personally numerous times and put his administration at his beck and call. Now, some folks on the GOP side point to this as one of the key reasons that Mitt Romney lost, mainly that Christie helped Obama look heroic, come as a savior, which ended up boosting his poll numbers and letting him win the general election. But if you listen to some of the people like at 538.com, who are really great data crunchers, they pretty much picked the 2012 election almost exactly as it went down. Mitt Romney was always slated to lose, far before Superstorm Sandy was even the flutter of a butterfly's wing thousands of miles away. Now, Obama wasn't the only one who looked heroic during Superstorm Sandy. Christie also rode that wave and came into re-election winning by 22 points. So not only did he get his state back, but once again it landed him as a major prime candidate for the 2016 election. Then the ball dropped. Or rather, the bridge closed. The infamous Bridgegate scandal colored both Christie and his administration as a bunch of corrupt bullies willing to take out punishment on their own citizens to get back at political enemies. Now, let me make this clear. Christie himself has never been proven to actually have known what was going on with those lane closures that caused such a catastrophic gridlock on that bridge. Those inside his administration have been investigated and arraigned, but Christie himself has never been proven to have been part of the scheme. Still, the stench of that scandal has followed him, along with other missteps along the way that have torpedoed his popularity going into this race. From a top-tier politician looking to go toe-to-toe with Jeb Bush, now he's a second-tier candidate looking to see if he can just get on the debate stage in that first early debate in August. His team is hoping that his personal appearances, town halls, and his straight-to-the-point talking style will help him gain more support. He's also changed up his game plan for the campaign itself. Originally, he wanted an all-out blitz around the country, blanketing it with rallies, publicity, and money. But his tanking poll numbers made a lot of that cash dry up and had to lead him to different options. His game plan now is to focus on very specific states, namely New Hampshire. This state actually has the first primary in the nation, and if he can win there or at least get second place, he can hopefully ride that momentum through the Northeast corridor, which then he can start up some momentum to build him through the rest of the early primary states. It's a gambit for sure, but it's one that doesn't leave a lot of room for error. So with that tightrope in mind, let's take a look at the political career of the number 14 person in the GOP to get in the race. Some of these are bound to come up during the campaign, either from his own team or his enemies. As a U.S. attorney under George W. Bush, Christie was responsible for taking down 130 public officials from both parties. His team will probably heavily lean on this to show that he can work across state lines and he also doesn't care about partisanship, especially when it comes to corruption. Secondly, he'll use this to show that since he can attack both parties, he can also work with Congress. Now, he made his official announcement to run for president on June 30th, and he did it at Livingston High School, a place where 35 years earlier he was actually class president. Now, in New Jersey, he signed the state's version of the DREAM Act, extending in-state tuition to undocumented immigrants, something that is not going to help him on the conservative side of the vote, but it could help him in the moderates and on the left. Since 2010, he has approved $5.4 billion in corporate tax breaks, averaging about $1.1 billion a year. But with that in mind, he also recently vetoed a bill that would allow citizens to look into the economic data to see if any of those tax breaks actually helped out the economy in his own state. If you want to look into that veto, it was Conditional Veto A.939. Just an FYI. Just recently in New Jersey, he unveiled 2 new plans to help drug abusers get clean and also remove themselves from the street to prison repetitive cycle. He's also waging 23 different court battles right now in an effort to keep certain state documents secret. That's a lot of court time. In the 218 days since he's been re-elected as governor, he has spent the entire day or a portion of it out of the state every single day. This little tidbit, alongside his diminishing poll numbers, is making 57% of the people in New Jersey want him to resign, and 71% of them say he cannot handle both jobs. New Jersey's unemployment rate is at 6.5, which is higher than the national average, and its long-term unemployment is higher than 48 other states. Not exactly a way to go out and call yourself the jobs candidate. In regards to social issues, he has changed over the years, moved back and forth, but right now he sits pretty squarely on the conservative side of things. He's cut $7.4 billion from family planning funding for Planned Parenthood, even though none of that money had ever gone to fund an abortion. And in 2013, he stated he was so against gay marriage that even if his kids had come to him and said that they were gay, he would hug them, he would love them, and then tell them that he thinks they shouldn't get married. Currently labeling himself the truth candidate, he actually lied about winning a major court battle dealing with pension reform. He also said that while he was in office, he would leave the pensions sacred, but then cut them. And then he also said that while in office, he would never enact a gun law, but he signed 3 of them. Once a huge and vocal supporter of Common Core, now he's flipped and said that he has grave concerns with how it was written and is trying to get his state to eject it. Now, he's not alone on that flip-flop. You can also put Bobby Jindal, Scott Walker, and Mike Huckabee in that same bucket. So those are just a few things that have happened to him while he's been in office, and a couple from before. Now let's get on to what he has to say about his current opponents in the GOP race and on the other side of the aisle. In the GOP side of things, he seems to have a certain flair for going after Senator Rand Paul, who a couple months ago filibustered long enough to let certain parts of the Patriot Act expire. And Christie says the next time an attack happens, Rand Paul should be dragged in front of a congressional committee and be taken to task for it, as it would be his fault for making the country less safe. He's also attacked Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton for saying that she wants to expand voting access and early voting hours, saying she only wants to do this to increase the opportunities for fraud. Sadly, this is such an oft-repeated talking point, and even more sad is the fact that it has never been proven out, and the data only shows the exact opposite of this. In recent studies of people looking for voter fraud, even those people who want to prove that it's true that there's so much of it out there have found nearly 1%, and sometimes even a fraction of 1% of votes that have actually been fraudulent. It's a ghost problem that doesn't need a solution. And that talking point is even more apropos for him, since New Jersey is 39th in the country for voter participation. The democratically controlled legislature is moving right now on a bill that will actually do exactly what Clinton said, expand early voting hours, and also make an auto registration possible. We'll see if they can get it passed, and also if they can get past a veto. But if they can't, it won't be the first time that Chris Christie has vetoed something and then had the citizens of his own state overturn him. A few years ago, he vetoed a bill that would raise the minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $8.25 an hour. Once he vetoed it, it went to the ballot as the people of his state said they wanted it to happen, and they passed that ballot by 61%. Now, this is a hefty amount of baggage to be carrying around as a potential candidate, but he does still have some very vocal supporters. One of his biggest supporters is the CEO of Home Depot, who has already promised, "I am going to work my ass off to make sure Chris Christie never needs money." Now, unlike some of the other multi-millionaires and multi-billionaire supporters, he's not promising to write a bunch of checks himself. What he's going to be is a super wealthy bundler, talking to his super rich friends, getting them to write checks for him. Christie's wife, Mary Pat, also supports him so much that she left her $500,000 a year job to go with him on the campaign trail. Now, currently, Chris Christie's approval rating in his own state is only 30%, far lower than you would want for anyone jumping into a national race. But there is one thing that people should keep in mind in regards to Chris Christie. He has nothing to lose. He would likely have been voted out of office next term anyway, so why not go for gold? His personality definitely breaks him out of the pack, but we'll have to wait and see if he can get back any of the media attention from people like Bush, Walker, and the current media darling, Trump. So the question for this week is plainly, What do you think of Chris Christie? Do you think he has a shot? Should he have even bothered jumping in the race? And if you think he has a chance, what is his best path to victory? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching another episode of the Motley Stew Show. Now, I know we have this series about getting to know the candidates, and we also do other big political news stories, but if there's something that you want to talk about, there's a story that you want to dive a little bit into, let me know in the comments and we'll see if we can make that happen. If you haven't subscribed yet, here's the handy button to do that. Also, in the most recent episode of my co-hosted podcast, The Flow of Things, we talk about the new film Ted 2, some of our dream jobs, and a lot of other fun stuff. You can find a link to that in the description down below. Stay tuned for next week, and as always, here's a little bit of Logan. Why am I going to turn it off? I was going to like I had finished that. I was Why my head is always tilted this way? Like I'm going to do the show like this. Looking back a couple years to the 2012 race, Christie was looked on as a heavy favorite candidate, possibly to win the nomination. This little tidbit, among many others, is making 57 people in New Jersey. 57 people? There's only 57 people in New Jersey. At Patriot at.